You know this face. It's Tillie, the Jersey Shore icon. Tillie's quirky grin is an unmistakable symbol of Asbury Park. Take a stroll on the boardwalk, and you'll find the face of the city's unofficial mascot everywhere. Search Asbury Park on Instagram, and there he is. He's even got his own beer. But this peculiar character is recognized far beyond the shore. Tillie's made his mark on pop culture with cameos in everything, from magazines to hit TV shows, including The Sopranos.
The way the American flag is to the U.S., this is Asbury Park to some people, to many people.
It's this recreation of Tillie peering out from the Wonder Bar that greets locals and visitors to the world-famous waterfront. But the funny face that started it all is locked away behind a sewage treatment plant in the same box it's been confined to for 17 years. The wooden shed has been battered by extreme weather at the shore, which has visibly taken its toll. Inside, layers of paint have been flaking away. The real Tillie is now at a tipping point, and Asbury Park may be dangerously close to losing this unique piece of its history.
At some point, and I think it's getting near that, it's not going to be salvageable because it's not going to be the image that people expect it to be anymore.
This year marks the 65th anniversary of Asbury Park's original Tillie mural, which sits in a parking lot just steps away from the ocean. The last time the public saw the painting was in 2004, as it was being cut from the Palace Amusements building, a landmark immortalized by Bruce Springsteen.
It's one of the few things that has kind of stayed constant in Asbury since, back in the 50s and 60s.
It just reminds me of a good time and old times.
The mural kept in the shed is one of two Tillies that adorned the facade of Palace Amusements, painted by Leslie Worth Thomas. Tillie's simultaneously amusing and haunting face greeted decades of visitors to the indoor amusement park. The murals gained worldwide notoriety, though, in the 1970s and 80s, as references to the palace emerged from some of Springsteen's biggest hits, including Born to Run. Tillie even appeared on an official Springsteen tour t-shirt and served as an eye-catching backdrop in an early publicity photo.
This was probably the first photo that most people saw of Bruce and the E Street Band. And it was taken at the Palace at night under Tillie. Tillie gloriously lit up.
As developers pursued the revitalization of the city in the 90s and 2000s, however, the palace was eyed for demolition to make way for new construction. That's when a group of Springsteen fans came together to form the nonprofit Save Tillie. Bob Crane, the president, says the group's original mission was to save Palace Amusements, which stood in this general area not too far from the old Carousel House.
Finally, when push came to shove, it became clear that there was no way to save Palace Amusements. The state set forth a series of rules under which Palace would be demolished, and they gave the developers a chance to put together a list of the items that they would preserve and save. They put Tillie on the list. It was basically a compromise.
Even the boss took notice of the campaign to rescue Tillie and other treasures from the palace. In fact, Springsteen donated to the nonprofit several times, with proceeds from local benefit concerts. On June 11, 2004, members of Save Tillie and people from throughout the community watched anxiously as workers cut one of the Tillie murals, a roughly 16 by 22-foot section of cinder block, from the building.
That crane operator lifted Tillie so lovingly, so slowly, almost with the skill of a surgeon. I mean, there was dead silence on the street. Total silence, and then everybody erupted into cheers. It was astonishing. Still is to even think about it. It's something you never forget.
The giant mural was loaded onto a trailer and backed into the parking lot of the Asbury Park wastewater treatment plant. Crane says, believe it or not, The parking lot was a better storage option than what developers had initially proposed for Tillie.
Asbury Partners, the original developers, wanted to put the murals on the beach, wrapped in plastic.
In all, more than 24 artifacts, including this bumper car mural, were hauled out of the palace before it was demolished. They were all meant to be stored temporarily, but 17 years later, Tillie is still waiting to return to public view.
It is just a frustrating, very emotional, distressing situation.
According to the permit outlining Asbury Park's oceanfront redevelopment project, boardwalk developer Madison Marquette is responsible for storing Tillie and the other items.
So the permit that Madison Marquette has to abide by says the Tillie mural has to be used in a new retail space or in the wall of a hotel lobby at the site of the former Palace building.
Madison Marquette did allow us to see Tillie in the storage shed, but wouldn't comment directly on when the mural would be put on display. Is it just Madison Marquette that makes the final decision about where Tillie goes and when?
There's a lot of players when it comes to where Tillie's going to wind up. There's Madison Marquette, which is responsible for the storage of Tillie. There's beachfront developer iStar, which owns a lot of buildings near the water. And then there's the city, as well as the Department of Environmental Protection, which approved the entire beachfront development permit. So they can't just roll this thing out so the public can see it.
Not long after Tillie was cut from the palace and stashed away in the wooden crate in 2004, a replica of Tillie's mischievous smile appeared on top of the Wonder Bar.
When we first did it, people were clapping. They were walking by and like, yes, they were so excited to see the Tillie back up.
Local artists, Leslie Steigelman and Julian Valencia, had to scramble to complete the clone for an advertising photo shoot involving Chevy Corvette and the Goo Goo Dolls. A production company had planned to use the front of the palace as the backdrop, except by the time they arrived in Asbury Park, the building and Tillie were gone. The owners of the Wonder Bar quickly offered up their building to make sure the ad campaign stayed in Asbury Park.
They were really in a bind. And of course, we totally agreed to let them paint the Tillie on our monolith. And then not only did they just paint the Tillie, but they painted the whole building the aqua green color to match the original palace. And it was just so exciting.
The Wonder Bar mural marked a revival for Tillie. As the waterfront flourished, a new generation would come to know his smiling face from his new home.
I love to see it there. I think it looks great. I'm glad to keep that memory alive.
People come from all over the world to see Tillie, have their pictures taken in front of it.
Nevertheless, members of Save Tillie spent years fighting to get the original mural out of the shed, or at least moved to a storage facility better suited for preservation. Crane says the nonprofit even paid for an art conservator to inspect the palace murals and report on their condition 3 times between 2005 and 2016. The final report by Paul Himmelstein detailed significant decay.
Sitting on all of the dirt and debris that had accumulated at the base of the painting were new chips of paint. The loss of the surface is really the critical issue here, because obviously if you lose the surface, having a bunch of cement blocks with nothing on them is not going to make a whole lot of sense to anyone.
But Tillie is not lost. He could still be restored. Himmelstein says artists have the ability to reattach these chunks of paint, lifting off the surface of the mural. Then, gaps of color could be filled in to get Tillie looking like he did in the glory days.
I think having the original Tillie on display somewhere would be a draw. People would come to town to see it. Just that weird circus, amusement culture from the past that, you know, they try to replicate in style now, but there's nothing that's ever going to be like that again.
Now we want to hear from you. What do you want to see happen next with Asbury Park's original Tillie? For NJ.com, I'm Natalie Paterson.